So I'm Leslie Budowitz, and this is a panel discussing the contemporary mystery set in the West. We are all members of the Rocky Mountain chapter of Mystery Writers of America, and that's the common link between us. Gwen Florio, Christine Carbo, and Mark Stevens. So Gwen is well known to many of you because she is the city editor of the Missoulian. Excuse me, I need to find my notes here. She's the city editor of the Missoulian and a former Missoulian reporter. Her fourth book just came out, and it is called Reservations. There will be a fifth book in the Lola Wicks series. Lola is a journalist who draws heavily on Gwen's own background in journalism, and we'll talk more about that. And Gwen's first book won the Pinkley Award for Best First Novel and a High Plains Book Award. And Gwen lives here in Missoula. Christine Carbo and I are neighbors up in the Flathead. She lives in Whitefish and I live in Big Fork. We've known each other since before we were published as members of the Authors of the Flathead, which is a writers group up there. And Christine's third book just came out. It is called The Weight of Night. Did I get all the words in the right order there?
Yeah.
The Weight of Night. And her books are set in and around Glacier National Park. And her first novel also won the Pinkley Award for Best First Novel. Mark Stevens is visiting us from Denver. He is president of the Rocky Mountain chapter of Mystery Writers of America. And Mark is another former journalist, and both in print and TV. And his third book, Trapline, was the Colorado Authors League winner for Best Genre Fiction. His fourth book just came out, and it is called Lake of Fire, and very timely topic. Both Christine and Mark's recent books dealt with fire. And he is, as I said, president of Rocky Mountain Chapter of Mystery Writers of America. MWA was founded in 1945, and its motto is, crime doesn't pay enough. And so we will talk a little bit more later about the organization and about the importance of writers' organizations in our professional lives, because I think all four of us would agree that they have been very important roles, played very important roles. And my name again is Leslie Budowitz. I live in Big Fork. I write two series. One is set in a fictional version of Big Fork. I call it Jewel Bay. I had to change the name so I could kill people, but you will all recognize it. And another series set in Seattle, in the Pike Place Market. So this morning's rain is very comforting to us all for many reasons, not least of which is the fire that we just talked about. So obviously we write about the West because we live here. But we write about it for other reasons too. So what I want to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Gwen, is what is the appeal of the West as a setting? And what makes these, I would like all of you to think about, what makes these stories that couldn't be set anywhere else?
That's actually an easy one for me. I am a Delaware girl, and when I came west, the bigness of it just amazed me, and I fell in love with it instantly. I find the landscape incredibly compelling. It informs all of my work, but it especially informs crime fiction for a couple of reasons. Nature is beautiful and nature is pitiless. You're on your own out here, and especially again in terms of crime fiction, and especially in a place like Montana, you can be really isolated. If something bad happens to you, you can call 911, but help is maybe 50 miles away, and you've got to figure it out yourself, and you've got to deal with the scary situations yourself. And I find that really compelling, and it kind of makes it easy to write crime fiction.
And you mentioned that you can call for help. Well, some places you can call for help.
You can even call for help.
In many you can't.
Yeah.
Christine, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I actually moved here with my family from Florida when I was young, and right before high school, so in middle school, and I hated it because it was like I was leaving the beaches, and we're going where? To Montana? Oh my gosh, where is that? And so when I got here, it took me about we moved here in January, like one of the coldest winters ever. In fact, Flathead Lake was completely frozen over, which never happens. And I remember my brother and I going skiing up on Big Mountain, which is no longer called Big Mountain, but it's, to us, it will forever be Big Mountain. And we were like the only ones up there. And we're like, why are we the only ones up here? And we were too stupid to realize that people didn't ski when it was that cold. And so we toughed it out, we skied, and we thought, well, okay, we're up here. And so that was the beginning of me deciding that I kind of liked it a little bit more than maybe I was in for. But, you know, I remember complaining to my parents, just a typical nasty teenager, Montana sucks. I'd tell them, and they'd be like, no, come on, you like it. I'd be like, no, Montana sucks. And then, I mean, I was all, you know, I was just in the worst of it, you know, 12, 13 or whatever. And, but by summer, I fell in love with it. And as the years have gone on and I've come and gone from Montana, you know, gone to college and places and come back, I've just loved it more and more. And Glacier Park, I've hiked many miles in Glacier Park and just love it, and decided that I would set my novels in and around that area. It's interesting to me because the canyon leading up to Glacier is a very kind of crime-ridden place, lots of meth production, lots of stuff going on, and so these millions of tourists come to this place, drive through the canyon to go to Glacier, where, you know, huckleberries are being sold on the side and all that, but there's all this subterfuge going on, and so I found that fascinating, as well as set up against kind of the way Gwen mentioned, this wild aspect, where there's this whole other wild world that almost makes the fight to control human crime, it almost kind of mocks it a little bit, like, okay, nature has its own kind of thing going on, and, you know, anything could happen to you, and it's got its own, I guess it's got its own rules or non-rules or whatever, but, you know, there's the killing and the predators and all that are going on, yet human animals try to control that. So that, we don't kill, we don't do these things that animals do. So I find that those things juxtaposed against each other is very interesting.
Well, I'm the third person in a row here from the East Coast who moved to the West. And I remember as a kid, I grew up outside Boston in Lincoln, Massachusetts, which is smack between Concord and Lexington, all this Revolutionary War stuff going on back there. But my father took a trip to Denver when I was a kid, and it just seemed, wow, so exotic, Denver. I knew it was high elevation and all that stuff. The West just, you know, open book, wide expanses. It just really captured my imagination. And now I'm sitting here in Missoula, and you mentioned Flathead Lake. I want to go up there, Glacier Park. I want to see it. It's just always sort of this idea of, you know, just these grand open spaces. What can you say about it? It's just that idea of what is possible. The East Coast, the cities seem like they're done, you know, they're finished. They're not, that's kind of a myth too. There's always change going on there, but here it just seems like blank canvas, and what are the humanscapes that are happening? And I think when you come out west, and I've been in Denver since 1980, I've moved there, you know, I think it becomes very obvious as you move around Colorado, as you move around the West, that people's decisions and what people are doing, what they're deciding, are changing the way it looks and changing the way even the wilderness is behaving with how they're managing water, how we're moving up into the urban, you know, interfaces, moving into the woods and into the wildlife, and, you know, bears in town, 490 houses getting completely destroyed a couple years ago in Colorado Springs. You know,
By fire?
Yeah. By fire. And so I'm fascinated, I think, to the same extent, just that, you know, I love every Survivor, you know, kind of related show in terms of seeing people in rugged situations and how they're gonna I don't know, my imagination is just, I want to go to Glacier right now and see what's going on.
Snow.
Snow.
Yeah. So It is interesting that three of you, well, two of you chose to come out here as adults. And I've always thought it really funny that I get extra credit for being a native Montanan when I had absolutely nothing to do with that. But I really do appreciate my parents' choice. One of the things that strikes me, and it's in part highlighted by the stories that you've told about coming out here, is the idea of Montana as the last best place to hide. And we've all known a lot of people who come out here because they are leaving something else. They are, as Huck Finn said, lighting out for the territories and leaving civilization behind. Well, fortunately, some of civilization can be found out here, thank goodness, for this lovely gallery and all the beautiful things that we've got here. But for me, that's one of the things that I try writing about regularly. I've got 4 books in the series so far, and there will be at least one more. And when you deal with small town, and this is something that I'd like the three of you to talk about too, although, I'd like to talk about the small town and community aspect of crime writing as well. But it seems to me that we've often got this challenge of as writers, where does the conflict in our stories come from? It can come from the people in the community. It can come from visitors. It can come from the clash between the visitors and the locals. And one of the things that some of my characters expose is this idea of coming west to get away from something else and to not actually be part of a community, to be the last best place to hide. And those secrets are really what drive a lot of mystery fiction. I think as mystery and crime writers, we're in the business of delving into secrets. So let's talk a little bit about the limitations of our settings. And what I mean by that is this challenge that is sometimes called Cabot Cove syndrome. And it takes its name from the town in Maine where Jessica Fletcher of TV fame, played by Angela Lansbury, on Murder, She Wrote. You wouldn't want to go to that small town because you'd be afraid you might get killed. And so for you, Gwen, you've dealt with that by moving Lola around. Your character, Lola Wicks, is a journalist, and in the first book, she's in her small Montana town, and it remains her route. But then she goes to Dakota and Wyoming, and in her next adventure, she's going to, well, she's currently in Arizona, and then in the next one,
Salt Lake.
Salt Lake City. So talk about the tension between the small town and too much crime, and moving the character around and changing that setting. I've given you a really big topic there.
Yeah, I moved her around for 2 reasons, and one was specifically that reason. She's in a really small town, and you can only kill off so many people before it gets weird. The second reason was selfish. I send Lola to places I want to go. I usually start all of my books with setting. Okay, I'd like to be on the Navajo reservation. It is a stunningly beautiful place. If I set a book there, I'm going to have to go down and spend a lot of time there. Too bad. So that's part of it. But it does there is that tension between, you can only move her around so much. There's only excuses for stories in so many places. And my first publisher thought it would be a great idea to have Lola jump from state to state, hence the names of the first 2 books, Montana, Dakota. My second publisher, when the series continued, very rightly pointed out, it's going to become contrived at some point. Why would Lola go to Arkansas for a story? Well, I mean, there's stories everywhere, but nonetheless. So they took the state names away. And what I did, the first 4 books were set in very rural places. For the 5th one, I do bring her to Salt Lake. And much like Christine, Lola hated the West when she first came out here. She found it hostile and weird and inconvenient. It's really inconvenient. You know, you have to go a long way to do anything. But then she came to love it. So I thought, okay, let's mess with Lola some more and send her to a city. And she's lost all of her street smarts. she forgets that parking is expensive and hard to find. So now the city is the inconvenient thing. So basically, I just look for ways to torture this poor girl. And if there is another one, I had actually been working on one that brings her back to Montana. So it is that combination of what I want to do for myself and what makes sense for the character in the book.
And Christine, you deal with that in part by setting your stories in and around Glacier National Park. And so you've got that influx of visitors, but you've also got the local residents and the tensions there. And Mark, your main character, is a hunting and fishing guide. And so she gets to deal with those tensions too. So I will turn the question down to that end of the table.
Okay. Well, part of the pleasure of being a mystery reader, which I am, I mean, you buy into this conceit. I'm a Anna Pigeon fan, Nevada Bar. She gets transferred from park to park, and every time, you know, brand new dead body and a brand new park. But it's, you know,
gotta wonder about Anna.
you kind of wonder about Anna, but you want to be with her, and she is just such a wonderful view of the world, and you just know that view from book to book, and you grow with her, learn with her, spend time with her. Harry Bosch, same way. A big, huge Michael Connelly fan. Walt Longmire, same thing. It's just, it's a joke in some ways. You really stop to think about it. So how do you make that kind of real in your own way? You're buying into this conceit. There's how many amateur detectives actually ever solve a crime? I mean,
Lordy, no.
I mean, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Law enforcement usually does a pretty good job, usually, and if they can't figure it out, yes, there are cold cases, that does happen, but it's usually law enforcement that's gonna come back around. There are cases where individuals do push the agenda and get involved and encourage law enforcement to come back around, but actually to be the person to confront the killer and all that kind of good stuff. So this is, you know, this is what we try to explore, I think, as writers, is what's driving these people, what is powering them into these very dangerous situations. We're spending time with Anna Pigeon and her worldview. Who wouldn't want to have Walt Longmire as their friend? I mean, you'd love to have Walt Longmire as your friend. He's so interesting and relaxed about a lot of stuff, and yet when the time comes, he can take care of business. So it's the opportunity to write about the human condition, I think. And my main character is a female hunting guide. She was inspired by a woman I met who still is a friend of mine to this day, who is as tough as nails and can go out into the most grueling situations and deal with hunters and their various problems and issues that they get involved with up there. But, you know, she's never solved a murder or anything like that. But I just try to bring problems and mostly guys up into the woods who have issues with each other, and then she deals with those. And they are some real world issues that get up there. So I'd like to watch her grow.
So, yeah, I don't really get around that, you know, issue of how many dead bodies are there going to be around or in Glacier, because my series is actually called the Glacier Mystery Series. That's what my publisher wanted to call it. And although they're not, all the crimes don't necessarily take place in Glacier. Some of them are maybe on the outskirts or outside or in one of the towns surrounding, and you know, or in the Flathead Valley. So so I can kind of move things around a little bit, but I haven't certainly gone, you know, out of state or anything like that, or even far from the Northwest Montana area. However, I probably could find the freedom to do that if I wanted to. And the reason that I would be able to do that is because my characters, they're actually each, even though it's called a series, they're actually standalones, because I take a new character with every book. So I don't have a series character. My setting is actually the main character in a way. So like my first book features a lead detective from the Department of the Interior who comes in, he's a kind of a special agent. It comes in to investigate a pretty serious crime that occurs on federal land, which is Glacier Park. But there's also the county influence with the law enforcement, because Glacier is on 2 different counties, and so whatever place the crime takes place, wherever that crime takes place, that county would be involved as well as the feds. And so, I kind of played his whole character arc out in my first book called The Wild Inside. In my second book, I plucked a character, one that was helping him locally, who was part of the law enforcement at Glacier Park. I called it the Park Police, although we don't really have park police in Glacier. We just have rangers who are trained at higher levels of law enforcement. But I fictionalized it. I created a park police. I wanted that faction. I wanted the rangers. I wanted a police force. And so, kind of like they have in the urban areas in DC and whatnot, they actually have park police. And so I plucked him, and he's my main character in the second novel. And then I have somebody who's introduced in both books, a forensic scientist who works for the Fayette County, who's my lead character in The Weight of Night, the book that just came out. So I get to play the whole character arc out of each person, and so I kind of create their world with each book. I find it interesting that I don't know how you would like string a character out for a lot of books. Because I kind of like to do the whole thing in one book. So that would be interesting for me to learn how to have a series. All of you guys have a series character, and you just kind of, I guess you get to have an arc, but then you get to string problems out that go on, and I find that kind of interesting. So.
It is a little bit different challenge. I just wrote my first standalone while I'm still working on it, and it is really interesting to me to try to learn everything about a character in one book. That's a whole different process than writing a series where you learn a little bit more about the character in each book. But I want to go back to you, Christine, and you, Mark, and talk about something that I find fascinating, in part because I'm just doing a little bit of it with the novel in progress, and that is writing a lead character of the other gender. Mark's protagonist is a woman, and in Christine's first 2 books, her lead characters were men, and in her third, her lead character is a woman. So, what does doing that? Why make that choice, and what challenges and adventures arise out of that? Mark?
Lots of challenges and lots of adventures, but in my case with Alison Coyle, she was inspired by that actual real woman. I was, my wife and I were on this day-long horseback ride in the Flat Tops Wilderness in western Colorado, dawn to dusk, kind of a ride way back up into the Flat Tops, and I'd taken a number of horseback rides, and you typically get a kind of, this is cliche, but you kind of get a grizzled old guy who's heard all the dumb questions from tourists and, spits tobacco juice and just hopes there's, minimum fuss and problems during the day. Get back and call it good. Well, we got this young, vivacious, smart, outgoing, enthusiastic. It was a summer day, and she knew everything about the cloud formations and the geology and the burn areas, and she was telling us about the undergrowth and the bugs and the beetles and the birds and everything, and she was just so interested in her surroundings. And then she kind of casually let it drop that she was a hunting guide come fall. And I had written a few mysteries. This is in the mid-90s when this happened. I'd written a few mysteries. I hadn't been published, but I had sort of this, I think I was aware of potential characters and situations, and it was one of those galvanizing moments where I said, I've got a character, and it happened to be a woman. So, I'd done some writing, but in this case, I'm really going to feature a woman. Well, what did I do? I went to the store, library, started checking out all the books by all you female writer types, and figuring out, okay, if you're going to feature a woman, and you're a woman, you must know the secret. You must know there's going to be some paragraph.
But we're not going to tell you.
Yeah, I know. The big puzzle. So I read these books, and I said, I'm going to go back, and when I find that page, that paragraph, I'll be able to point to it, and I'll say, aha, that's the key to writing a female character, and I'll just, adapt that somehow. Well, there is no paragraph, there is no sentence, there is no there is no one thing that unlocks. What it is that character, that individual. It's not. I realized, to cut to the chase, that I just need to understand my character and how she processes the world. I don't have to understand all women, you know. And there's basically no aspect of human life that has not been written about from both points of view. And I just thought I couldn't switch that character to a man. I didn't think it would be as interesting to put a guy into these situations. There's much more tension with a woman, so I just went for it. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
So for me, I think that it was just an issue of the voice that came to me, and it just that first book happened to be a male voice that came to me. I don't actually know why, other than that I grew up with brothers and was a bit of a tomboy when I was younger, and I think that that's just what came to me. Also because law enforcement is dominated by men mostly, and so it seemed like a good fit, and I wasn't super sophisticated about it, like, you know, wow, there's a lot of women readers out there in the world and I should shamelessly make my detective female because, you know, let's speak for the females, and I didn't do that, just because that's not the way it came to me when I first started writing. And I remember when my agent was shopping around the book, one of the editors that she had given it to had said, has she ever thought, this is a shameless proposal, but has she ever thought about turning him into a female? Because it might sell better if the main character was female. And that was like, oh my God, I don't want to go back and rewrite that whole book and make my male female. And here's the thing for me, with writing a male, I feel like I'm not really writing a male, I feel like I'm writing a human being. It doesn't really matter if it's Gretchen in my third book, or Ted in my first book, or Monty in my second book. I am writing, like, sort of similar to what you said, a character. I'm writing a human being who has issues and problems and things that you throw at them for them to solve and to get through and to deal with emotional problems that could happen to a male or a female. And so I don't really think of it as like, wow, now I'm writing a male, or what now I'm writing female. I'm writing a human being, a character with emotions and problems, and I just tackle it that way. So I don't, there's nothing contrived about, like, oh, would a guy say this or a girl say, I mean, I think there are subtle differences in the way males and females talk, and I try and be tuned into that, and maybe even some things that you might think. I'm kind of a little bit of a wuss about, I stay away from a lot of, like Gwen's short story in the Montana Noir, she totally goes into the male kind of, like, the guy looking down the girl's shirt, looking at the boobs, checking her out, and I totally just stay away from that. I don't deal with that very much in my books, but I might have to eventually. And so, I mean, there are the differences.
Getting uncomfortable just talking about this.
Yeah, I don't like it, so I stay away from all that. But, you know, there's plenty of other interesting stuff to tackle. And what else? Gender. I mean, I think it's fun to just do both, and that's why I like the setup that I have, that I can have a new character, because I wouldn't have wanted to be stuck with one male all the way through. So I have the opportunity to do both.
I'm going to jump in on this.
Yeah,
one too.
and so Christine mentioned short stories, and short stories give us freedom as writers to play with things that we might not do in our books, and that's what Gwen has done with one of hers.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be included in the Montana Noir collection that's out now. And my first thought when I got over just being dazzled by being included in this, because it was such a wonderful opportunity, was, holy crap, I have to write a short story, which I have not done in a good 15 years. And short stories are wonderful and terrifying. I love other people's, but the idea that you have to crunch everything in such a limited amount of space, in a novel you can kind of wander around and figure out what's going on, and man, you got to know from the get-go with the story. So it was really fun. It was fun writing from a male point of view. These guys are horn dogs. They're bad. I will say that during the editing process, Jim and Keir, our male editors, said, that probably wouldn't be said or done that way. I was like, thank you. So that was good. But yeah, it was a fun challenge and one I think I should put to myself more often. I think when I went back to the novel, it helped me get a little more pointed and think things through a little bit more thoroughly than I tend to do. I'm what they call a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. God forbid I should outline. But now I might, not so much outline, but plot out a couple chapters ahead as I'm writing. Like I sort of know where I'm going for the next few chapters, and then I kind of leapfrog again. I don't do the whole thing front to back, but I have more of an idea than I used to have, and I think writing the short story was really helpful for that.
So that's an interesting topic, how our processes change as we write. And let's see, my most recent novel, Trouble at the Jam Fest, is set at a jazz festival, and that is the 7th published novel. And every one has had its own process. I'm a planner, not a pantser. Writing by the seat of my pants would absolutely terrify me. And maybe this is because my previous career was as a lawyer, and where you do have to plan things out in advance, and you have to know where you're going to go. And so the stories come to me sort of that way, and I know where the end is. But with the last couple, with Trouble and with the one that I'm working on right now, the story has refused to completely reveal itself, and I have been forced to be a little bit of a pantser in places. Coming over to the dark side. And it's really kind of terrifying, and yet at the same time, I have learned so much from doing that. And that was why I was interested in your comment, Gwen, that writing the short story taught you some things that you took back with you when you went to writing the novel. These experiences of pantsing have taught me that, one, I don't want to ever do that again. And two, I probably will do it again, because stories take on their own lives and you don't necessarily get to know them all in advance. And I should say that even when I plan a book, sometimes a lot of things change. In Crime Rib, my second book, which as you can tell is set at a steak grill-off, the killer changed. And that was because I realized that the motivation that this particular man had, his desires in the book, what he most wanted, would not result in him killing the victim. He would do something else to get what he wanted, and yet the man was dead. So what did I do? I looked for another killer, and the other killer was there all along. Your subconscious is smarter than the rest of you. So Gwen, if you'd like to talk a little bit more about process, we'd be happy to hear it, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that from the two of you, but I've got the mic cord kind of twisted around here, so here.
Okay, you know, it's funny when you're talking about process. I've been a pantser forever, but I've heard this horrible, horrible rumor that my editors may demand an outline for my next book proposal. And I am just like, just kill me. You know, they want a synopsis, which is its own special form of hell, which is like a few pages, but then an outline. Although I take great heart from one of my favorite writers, Dana Stabenow, who said the most creative fiction she ever wrote were the outlines that her publisher demanded. And so I may have to do that. But my process is I know the beginning, I know the end. And there's all that stuff in the middle that is kind of terrifying, but I just write toward that ending. And I do love the fact, I mean, it's kind of awful not knowing what happens next, but not knowing what happens next means that you're surprised. And some of those surprises are delightful, and some lead you down a rabbit hole where you've got to throw a bunch of stuff out. But the delightful days are worth it, and I'm hoping that as I am delighted writing, please God, a reader will be delighted reading. So it's pretty formless and vague. Sorry, but hopefully you guys.
But it's working.
Yeah, ditto. I'm very much a pantser, and so much so that after I had sold The Wild Inside, and actually my agent got an offer from I got an offer from HarperCollins and from Simon Schuster, and I went out to New York and met both editors, and the one from Simon Schuster said, well, I should preface by saying The Wild Inside actually has this glorious grizzly bear that kind of shows up, and he's just, people just love this bear that's in my book. He's captured because he has some evidence inside of him, and they're hoping he'll poop it out because it's a federal bear, and I don't want to give too much away. But anyway, it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually quite dramatic and lovely, and I just love describing this glorious, magnificent grizzly bear. And so this editor fell in love with this bear also, and I wasn't even thinking about book 2 or anything like that. She's like, so which animal is your next book gonna feature? And I was like, a wolverine. Here, I'm out in New York and I'm meeting these editors, and I didn't want to disappoint, so I just pantsed a wolverine. And so then luckily they didn't require any kind of a synopsis or outline or anything, and I started Mortal Fall and I wrote it, and I had this wonderful wolverine biologist who ended up getting murdered, and was able to slide in all this really great stuff about the wolverine, because they really are fascinating animals. I mean, so fascinating, and the biologists that study these wolverines are crazy. They're fascinating people alone. I mean, they'll go anywhere to track these little creatures down. And but by the 3rd book, Gwen, they said, and we've actually shared the same publisher, Atria Books, with Simon Schuster, and so rumor had it, the rumor that you have may be true. So by my 3rd book, they said, we want a synopsis, we want, and so I was the same way. I was like, oh, I have to write 3 or 4 pages about like the plot, like what's going to happen. And it was very creative. I can say that The Weight of Night did not follow the synopsis. I ended up being a pantser with The Weight of Night anyway, in spite of my synopsis. But it was kind of comforting to know that there was a little bit of a backbone out there somewhere. So I learned from that, and I wish I was more of a plotter. I really do. I wish I could be more organized that way. And I think it could be really helpful. But it is a delightful thing when new things show up in the story that you haven't thought of, and you figure things out, and it becomes this fluid kind of creative process. I think there's a middle ground. I really do, and I'm trying to get to it. This kind of a little bit of outlining, a little bit of plotting, a little bit of, no? You go.
I think I might be outnumbered here.
Yeah, 3 to 1.
Yeah, oh well.
Don't go that route, Christine.
find
No.
that
Pantsing is the only way to go. Leslie.
Who invited him? Oh wait, that was me.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd begin to think about the end of a book, because all I care about is now in the book. What's happening right this second? I just don't know how people do it. And I've been to workshops about plotting, and I hear about 3x5 cards on the wall, and the first act and the second act and the turning point and all that. I just don't know how you do it, because to me I would be bored then kind of painting by numbers, filling in the little circles and squares to get to the end, and I would be personally bored by that process. So I just go with a general idea of concept or an issue. Each of my books kind of tackles a theme or a topic, and for instance, in the 5th book, which is done, I wanted to deal with legalized marijuana in Colorado. I didn't know how in the world I would work that into Alison Coyle's world, but then I read a newspaper story about a hunting situation in Michigan where they found a guy tied to a tree, dangling and roped up to a tree, and he needed help getting out of this situation. And I don't know how they stumbled across this guy, but he wouldn't say what happened. He wouldn't tell anybody how he got into that situation in Michigan. And I said, there's my opening scene. I have no idea what's going to happen, but if Allison comes across a guy who's tied to a tree and won't explain why, certainly something bad has happened. So I just started writing, and I started asking questions, what is going on, and followed the story from there.
So I'll say one more thing about planning versus pantsing, and that is that for me, the planning stage is the discovery stage. It's not I can never remember right brain versus left brain, but it's not a left brain process of decision, it's a right brain process of discovery. And it's very messy, and I used a lot of different colored sticky notes on my closet door in my office. And I took a picture of it before I took it down. It was quite fun. But I lived with those colored sticky notes for so long that sometimes when I'm writing, I'm thinking, what should happen next? I glance over at the closet door for inspiration. I took them down. They're not there anymore. But I took a picture. So let's...
Leslie, I just wanted to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
So Gwen, did you plot out the short story then? Did you? Is that what you said? You kind of took that back, that a little bit like you learned? Did you actually see the ending, or did you
Again,
panster the short story too?
Much like with my novels, I knew the ending. And then the getting to the ending was sort of a mishmash of a number of things that I brought in. A real crime that happened in Missoula, some stuff from my son and his best friend's college years. I forget what else went into that, but no, I guess I pantsed the short story.
Yeah, I'm just
Although,
curious because
when
it's
you
so
think
much
about it.
shorter, so
Yeah,
it just seems like a shorter road trip, like
yeah. It was like a trip across town rather than,
than to Alaska.
right.
So let's talk a little bit more about protagonists. Mark made the point that when we read a series character in particular, and we are all writing series, although we've all got a standalone either in the works in Gwen's case or in the computer in Mark's and mine, when we read or write a series, we're taking a journey with a character. And so Gwen, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you developed Lola, who is a journalist, as you are. In her third adventure, the one in Wyoming whose name has just escaped me. Disgraced. We learn a lot about Lola's experiences in Afghanistan, and you covered part of the war in Afghanistan yourself. So talk with us about developing Lola and about using your own background and the pros and cons of that.
You know, so part of it was just sheer insecurity. I wanted to write about something I knew. I wanted my character's job to be believable. And I could either spend a whole lot of time doing research, or I could write what I know. And I'm not a huge fan of write what you know, but in this particular case I was. And then there's a second part that's a little bit evangelizing in favor of journalism, especially these days. Thank God my series preceded the whole fake news nonsense. But I wanted to show an accurate picture of a journalist. In movies, especially if there's a female reporter, she ends up sleeping with her source, which makes me want to throw things at the screen. That's like the biggest no-no out there, and yet it invariably happens in movies, and I hate it. So I wanted to show what the real work was like. You know, it's a lot of digging in documents and knocking on doors, and if anyone saw the movie Spotlight,
I was just going to ask you about that.
that was a wonderful, perfect portrayal. And journalism is so under attack these days that again, I want to stand up for what we do. Lola's life, because of the nature of the books, is way more exciting than mine ever was. So that's a little disingenuous, I guess. The other thing, taking her over a series, in each of the books, obviously there's some incident that has happened that she has to deal with, but I also try to make her deal with a personal issue each time, because she does have to grow and change, or else, to me at least, she would be kind of one note and not very interesting. So I always throw in something that she's struggling with on her own. And in this fifth book, I've really whacked her hard. That girl is down, and we'll see if she's out or not. But so that's part of how I try to deal with, to me at least, keeping her interesting throughout the series and getting her, I hope, getting readers invested in how she comes through these things.
I like what you said about putting her in a situation in each book where she has to face something in herself. And that, I think, goes back to the question Christine raised about writing a series character and keeping her interesting through a series, is she has to keep growing as an individual, and we have to keep learning things about her. We get to keep learning things about her. What has Allison taught you, Mark?
Next question. Wow. Well, that's a great question, Leslie. It was not on the prepared notes here.
No, it was not.
That's not fair. You know, just the process that this is going to be vamping as I go, but
Pants it.
Pants it. Okay. You know, worldview. I really think that you read a book, and I think I've become a little sharper in my worldview by writing a character, because your character better have a clear idea about what they think about the world.
Yeah.
If they're kind of mushy and uncertain, your story, I think, is going to be mushy and uncertain. They can be open to new ideas, or open to the fact that there are lots of variety of opinions in the world. But in Allison's case, in one of the character issues with her is she survived a commercial airplane crash. Well, I was very inspired by the actual story of that DC-10 that went down in Iowa, that left Denver. I was a reporter. I think, Gwen, you and I were, I was at a TV thing at the time in the late 80s, but did you cover that
I was
crash?
not there
Okay.
then. Yeah, I was still.
But I had friends who covered that crash when the DC-10 went down in the cornfield in Iowa, and then became that movie Fearless, with, I think it was called Fearless. But a really compelling story, and I also covered a lot of disasters. I covered the earthquake in Mexico City in 1986 when 10,000 people were killed. I was down there that day, that evening. I covered hurricanes, I covered volcanoes. I went down to Colombia for the eruption of a volcano. You see random death and things like that, it will change your life. And I put a lot of that, what I'd experienced, into Allison after she survived the commercial airplane crash. So she goes to the Flat Tops as her healing spot. It's just recommended as a place where she goes to get her head back together and her body back together. And then she adapts it as her home, as she becomes sort of the self-appointed sheriff of the Flat Tops. She works with law enforcement on issues, but she has a very clear worldview about issues and I say men and their big ideas about how the world should work. She wants the Flat Tops to be kept just the way it is. So spending time with Allison, I don't think I knew all of that when I started writing the books. The opening line of the very first book deals with that issue of random death and of things like that. But I just sharpening my own sense of thinking about the West and thinking about issues. Yeah.
I think
How's that
it's
for
really,
vamping?
that's great. You might find a book in that. I think it's really important for us to remember that the events that touch our characters need to really touch them. They need to change them. We shouldn't be writing pop-up characters. They're not the Pillsbury Doughboy. You can't punch them and have them pop right back up and hold their same shape. They have to be affected by what they do. And as you might guess from what I've said about the titles of my books and from the humor, that mine are on the lighter side. But I still think it's important, even writing the lighter side, that the terrible things that happen, the random death and the physical struggles that sometimes happen, and most importantly, the shaking of the worldview, have to continue from book to book. The character has to be affected somehow. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be realistic. And I can make jokes about names and throw in lots of recipes and have a lot of fun with a lot of other things, but I can never be less than serious about the effect of crime on the community. And in part, that comes from living in a small town. I lived in St. Ignatius for years, just outside of it, and I live outside of Big Fork now. And so I see that when a crime happens, and certainly our small towns have their share of it, it does in fact influence everyone, and you don't get over it quickly. You don't just pop back up. Can you talk about the effects of the crimes on your characters, Christine, and then maybe Gwen, you can talk about that too.
Sure. So, in my first book, I think I mentioned that I have a guy who comes from the Department of the Interior. He's a Series 1811 agent. He comes to Glacier Park. However, Glacier is the last place he wants to be, because when he was a teenager, he was camping there with his father one night, and his father got attacked and killed by a grizzly bear. So he witnessed this as a young boy, was very traumatized by it. And here he comes to Glacier and has to be in the very environment that he kind of fears almost, and it was traumatized in. And so I wanted Glacier almost to be this kind of haunting, almost an antagonist itself, instead of this glorious place where we go hike and on a sunny day and have ice cream in West Glacier and that kind of thing. I wanted it to be something much more haunting and desolate for my character. And so he really has to kind of work through his own psychological dilemmas while he's investigating this case that actually involves a grizzly bear as well. And so it's right in the forefront for him. And I find the kind of like, what do you learn from your characters? I think I've learned a little bit about myself, and that's that I keep dealing sometimes with events that happen in the younger years. I've seemed to do that in all 3 books, and that since I'm a pantser, it wasn't really planned out. But somebody asked me, I think it was for the right question, I was asked, you seem like you deal with like adolescent trauma a lot. And I'm like, I'm not sure why. I don't think I was traumatized as an adolescent myself. But I think on some level we all have stuff from our childhood that affects us deeply, even if we have very healthy kinds of family lives or feelings of safety in our family lives. All of us in that kind of path to away from childhood innocence into adulthood, we all come across things that are going to, some of us challenged deeply by really traumatic events, some of us not so traumatic but challenged. They still feel traumatic, just that thing that happened in the playground, or that time something creepy happened, or that, just that whole brushing up against the world. I remember when my son was little and he went out to the mailbox and he came in and he had like one of those flyers that said we've just won $1 million, and he was so excited. Mommy, we won $1 million, we won $1 million. And it almost makes me want to cry just talking about it, because I remember going, oh no, babe, the world lies. The world lies to you. We did not win $1 million. And in fact, even if we go through everything that this brochure tells us to do, we're still probably not going to win that $1 million. I'm pretty 100% positive we're not going to win that $1 million. So anyway, there's just that breaking away from childhood that on some level must interest me a lot, and I didn't know that until I had dealt with several incidents. Something happens to another child with my second book, with Monty as my main character, and another child disappears in a kind of a bad prank that is played in Halloween out at a cemetery, and one child goes missing, and he feels responsible for that. And so I also deal a little bit with guilt. Gretchen, in my third book, has a sleep disorder. She's a parasomniac, and I came across this whole information. This sparked my interest. This article I read about all these murders, literally, that have committed over the years by people who are sleeping. They are not accountable. It's almost they're out, they're sleeping, they don't know what they're doing. Their body doesn't produce the right hormone that paralyzes them in their sleep, like most of us do. And it's a sleepwalking taken to the extreme, and these people will have dreams that there's a demon in the room. Like one guy in London dreamt that there was a demon in the room, and he woke up and he had strangled his wife. Another guy in Canada literally got in his car, drove across town, and killed his in-laws, asleep the whole time. zombie-like behavior. And so I found it actually fascinating. A lot of these cases have been to trial. A lot of the people have gotten off. It's like they're so guilt-ridden anyway. They're so traumatized by the fact that they've done this in the sleep. And so that has always fascinated me too, this idea that people can do things that aren't even like crime on purpose. That, like a car accident where you've taken out a family or something and you have to live with this guilt even though you didn't you didn't plot it, you didn't plan it, you didn't commit murder on purpose, it just happened. And so that's always fascinated me too. And so I think I learned a lot about myself when I deal with things that interest me with these characters. And did I answer your question?
Since I've forgotten what it is, I'm going to say yes. Gwen?
Yeah, it was about communities, and I actually had not thought about this until you posed the question. In that, I think all of my books deal at some level with the effect of crime on a community. I covered the court beat for a while at the Missoulian, and one of the things that struck me every day in the court system was the ripple effects of crime. You mentioned accidents, especially fatal DUIs. You would have these families in court, the family of the guilty person, their person's going off to prison. He got drunk and he killed somebody. And the family of the victim, obviously, is trauma. I mean, these sort of layers and layers of trauma that you saw every day. A number of my books are set on or around Indian reservations, and my fifth one is set in Salt Lake. Obviously, there's a very particular community there. And so you've got this dynamic of when a crime happens, this hyper-awareness of the minority community, this is going to make us look bad, and the majority community going, see, that's what they're like. And that also holds true in Salt Lake with the LDS community. And that awareness on either side can inform how people act, what they do, whether they commit crime or not. And that's always fascinated me. It's something that's fascinated me as a journalist, and something that clearly has carried over into my fiction. Very much how law enforcement handles it, and that is can be really disturbing sometimes.
By coincidence, we are all writing amateur sleuths. And so the interesting thing to me about an amateur sleuth is you've got two parallel investigations going on at the same time. You've got the official law enforcement investigation, and then you've got the amateur's parallel investigation, and they are going to intersect to some extent. And it's always seemed to me, especially because I'm writing on the lighter side, where sometimes we strain credibility a little bit, it's always seemed to me that the role of the amateur sleuth is crucial, because what the professional sleuth does is help us get to restore. I'll step back a second. The murder or other crimes, and in our books it usually is a murder, and sometimes more than one, disrupts the social order of the community. And the role of the official investigation, the law enforcement investigation, is to restore the external order of the community by bringing the person to justice. And the amateur sleuth has a role in that very often because she knows the community, she knows the people, and she can ask questions that perhaps a sheriff's deputy or a police officer can't ask. She can see connections that perhaps the official investigator can't see. She can find out things and promote that investigation, and perhaps even really solve it herself. But her real goal, or her real function, is to restore social order. And that's why I think that mysteries set in a bookshop, or in my two series set in retail shops, or in a cafe, they really appeal to that part of us that wants our social order restored. We want to know more than that the bad guy has been arrested and is going to trial and will probably be convicted. We want to sleep better at night. We want to know that our friends are doing okay. We want to find out those things. So that's where the effect of the community comes in the lighter side as well. I want to leave some time for your questions, but because we are all members of Rocky Mountain chapter of Mystery Writers of America, I'd also like us to talk about the role of writers' organizations in our lives and in our careers. And as I said earlier, Mark is president of the chapter, and he was previously the president of Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, which is based in Colorado and puts on a tremendous writers' conference every fall. And in fact, that's where I first met both Mark and Gwen. Christine and I met through Authors of the Flathead. And I think we are all members of Sisters in Crime, which is an international organization of more than 3,800 members, mostly writers. I'm the immediate past president. So writers' organizations have been important to us. Can each of you talk a little bit about that? And Mark, would you also talk about the mystery contest?
Sure. So can I have one of your bookmarks?
Sure.
So here's why I like belonging to groups. See that cover at the bottom there? The unbelievable cover. You should look it up online, The Wild Inside. When I saw that cover, I saw it the first time in an ad, I think, maybe online or somewhere, maybe in Mystery Scene magazine. And I said, I have to read that book. I mean, that cover is just so compelling. A bear, this great thing. I mean, and I write outdoor kind of mysteries, and here comes this new Montana mystery writer. And I thought, wow. And I was going to Left Coast Crime in maybe a month later or something like that. And it might have been Phoenix or one of those. Portland. And here comes Christine Carbo down the hall. And I'm going to go up to her and talk to her because I just, there she was. So,
excuse me, Mark, I'm going to interrupt and explain what Left Coast Crime is, because it's a curious name if you don't know. In mystery world, and this is probably true in other genre fiction too, I think it is true in romance, there are what are called fan conventions. And there are 3 of them around the country. And writers go and we meet readers, fans, librarians, agents, editors, but mostly we're there to meet and talk with the readers. And they're there to meet their favorite writers, to meet new writers. And there is one that is set in somewhere in the West every year. It moves around, and it's called Left Coast Crime.
And I go as a writer and as a fan because I get to meet some of these people. I've gotten to meet people by becoming a joiner. My wife says, you didn't used to be a joiner. You didn't used to do this kind of stuff. And I said, but these are writers. They're my people. And so, but here I am on a panel with Christine Carbo, and Gwen and I worked together and got to know Leslie, and just the community, the help, the support, the bouncing ideas off each other in terms of, whether it's marketing or business stuff with agents and publishers, thinking about writing, spending time developing plots, and, can I grab you for 10 minutes and bounce an idea off you kind of thing. It's just so helpful. I feel completely like I've got, it's a community, it's network, it's power. So I'll come back to the 6-word mystery contest maybe in a second. Or,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, writing is a solo activity, and yet, and we spend a lot of time home alone in our rooms, or Gwen is a coffee shop migrant from you may find her in any given coffee shop in downtown Missoula writing away. So it's a solo activity, and yet every opportunity I have had as a writer has come to me because of groups and people I have met, including my agent and my first editor, and every opportunity has come because of making connections with other people.
And I remember my first time at Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, where you walk into a room full of hundreds of people, and as Leslie said, we're soloists. We hide in our rooms, and those are our happy places, alone in our heads writing, and suddenly you have to be social. But I was, at one of the panels, I was chatting with a young woman next to me, and we just, got along really well, yak, yak, yak. She wrote something very different than I, but nonetheless, we hit it off, and at the end of the conversation, she said, another friend of mine and I are forming an online critique group. Do you want in? Yes, I want in. And there ended up being 5 of us, and when we formed that group, none of us was published. Now all of us are published. Yay. We spent years throwing, manuscripts back and forth and getting feedback. And more than anything, it's that sense that somebody's got your back. You've got someone who cares about what you are doing and is rooting for your success just as you are rooting for theirs. And as each of us subsequently got publishing contracts, there were great celebrations online. And now when we go to these conferences, we see each other, and I call these things writer camp. It's like going to summer camp and seeing all your buddies again. And it's a wonderful experience in so many ways, and really necessary, I think.
Do you want to add to that, Christine?
Sure. I mean, there's not a lot to add. I think you guys have covered it all. It's just an invaluable thing. I actually am not a joiner either, and so I was a little leery about going to these things, but I was so wrong. I mean, they're so great. So yeah. So if any of you writers out there, or any other thing that your hobby, get involved with groups, because it's invaluable, that networking and support system, and yeah.
So it turns out that there has been a little bit of a schedule change, and instead of going until 11, we're going till 10:45. So I'm going to give Mark 6 words to talk to us about the 6-word writer mystery contest, and it is 10:35 now. But we also want to have time for your questions.
Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers is running a 6-word mystery contest, and it's very cheap to enter. I think it's $6 per entry, and various categories, including hard-boiled or noir, cozy, thriller, police, procedural, romance, and lust. And so 6 words to boil down. And one classic example is for sale, baby shoes never worn. That's the classic kind of 6-word deal. But
Ernest Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway. But you're going to see we're going to have a big celebration on December 13th, a Wednesday in Denver, and we will announce the winner, and there's all sorts of prizes. So go to rmmwa.org to pull up the form and enter if you're inspired by concision.
And you do not need to be a member, and you don't even need to think of yourself as a writer to participate. So, what else can we tell you? What questions do you have for us? Yes.
I have a question that can start with Mark and maybe go to the rest of you, but what does the woman who you based your books on think about your writing? And then also, have you ever had people say, well, that couldn't happen, that are experts in her field?
So the question is, what does the woman who is the basis for Alison Coyle in Mark's series think about the work? And have we ever had anyone say to us, that couldn't happen?
She is a reader before they get published, so she really helps me get a lot of things right. She likes the character a lot. She's been featured in newspaper stories about having inspired the books. So she's a big fan, I guess I'd say. And she will read them and say things like, magpies don't go to that elevation. They're lower down, kind of a thing. I'll go, thank you. But nonetheless, a few little things have slipped in here and there, and I get little emails. But it's, I would say, on the minor side. I really try to, as much as possible. Are you ready to challenge me with something that's wrong in the books?
Oh, heavens.
Okay.
No.
Because I'm open to the fact that there may be
For
a mistake.
instance, the park police, there's no
Right.
park police, and
Right.
so I
Right.
just wondered if
Yeah.
that could carry
Yeah.
over to the rest of you.
Yep.
I've been really fortunate. I've not yet had anybody say something couldn't happen. And in fact, the people in Big Fork have been extremely welcoming, and there's a little bit of a game about which fictional character is inspired by which real person. But nobody is actually inspired by a real person unless they have the real person's name. And that has happened a few times because they've bought character naming rights at a charity auction. And the only exception to that is the French chef. He's not in town anymore, and he was just so sweet. I had to keep him because I missed his food.
I also think it's really important. I don't catch everything, but in my acknowledgments page, I always say, I've taken liberties with the park police. This is not to suggest that the rangers are, incredible people, well trained, and in any way. And and if I've taken liberty with the famous loop in Glacier Park, where the woman pushed her husband off, the bride,
Like she'd
of
never
6
heard
days.
of divorce?
When my second story had actually already started it before that happened, was I had a fall at the loop, and I did take a few liberties with the landscape in terms of being able to rappel down certain cliff walls and things like that for for the law enforcement to study the situation. And I put in there's no place that you're going to repel right around this area. Because I want to be fair. I mean, Glacier Park is so iconic. People know these places. I don't, you know, if I'm going to take liberties, I want them to know I'm taking them, so I don't insult anybody, kind of.
Other, so, real quick.
Yeah, and I likewise, because I put my books in real places, but then within those places I have made up settings, and I say that in the notes at the end, that okay, there's a church here that actually isn't here, or there's these ruins, and those are actually in my mind. What I get a lot, and I suppose I should have expected it because my character is a journalist, people literally have written me notes in the middle of the night going, "Oh my God, are you okay? I never realized that happened to you." I was like, of course that didn't happen to me. I would be in a rubber room if that had happened to me. But people think that these things that Lola has gone through are also things that I've endured, and hell no. I'm much meaner to her than I am to myself.
So, more questions? So, why don't we, each of us go down the line and tell people what we are working on next? What's next? Next book or project?
I'm turning in to my agent on November 1st a revised, updated version of a standalone thriller set in Denver, and it's called No Lie Lasts Forever.
Ooh, and he told me about it over dinner last night, and
Good,
you
yeah.
are gonna love it. Christine, what's next?
So I just turned in my fourth, and I'm working on revisions for it. And The Weight of Night, we didn't talk about the fire thing, but
No, we
it's got
didn't.
fire on the cover. And 2015 really inspired me to have the glacier park that was on fire as my setting, instead of just the haunting, beautiful glacier. Not that fire can't be beautiful, but I wanted to cover all sides of that. And in that book, there's a boy who gets abducted, and so the local FBI is actually called in, and so I kind of was introduced you to a character. Her name is Allie Page. So I plucked her, and she's the main character for the book that I've just turned in, and so she's based in Kalispell, the local, in the regional office there.
It's called what, and when will it be out?
So the title isn't completely, I think it's going to be called A Sharp Solitude next June.
And Gwen, Reservations came out earlier this year, and then what's next?
So just by happenstance, I have two coming out next year. The fifth book in the Lola series, which is called Under the Shadows, comes out in March. As I said, that's set in Salt Lake, deals with issues within the LDS Church that are not polygamy. I was not going to go there. And then I have a standalone literary novel coming out in July. As of last week, it was called Women of Lost Glories, and that's set in Afghanistan.
And I've seen the draft cover, and it's really evocative. Trouble at the Jam Fest, the fourth Food Lovers Village mystery, which is set in fictional Jewel Bay, came out in June, and there will be at least one more in that series. It will be out next June. It is called, get ready to groan, As the Christmas Cookie Crumbles. And I'm working on a standalone myself. It is set in Billings, where I grew up, from 1973 to present day. Inspired, I can't even say it was inspired. For years, I remembered this tiny little thing that happened when I was a senior in high school at Central. And I kept wondering, what was really going on? What was really going on? There's no way to ever know. And so I made it up. So we have time for another question or two, if there are any. Yes?
It's 10:45.
Oh,
Okay, your clock is vastly different than mine, which says 10:45. So thank you very much. You've been a delightful audience, and we hope to see you again.